Hey everyone, welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman is on assignment. Here's what we're looking at.
Our members deserve transparency. Our members deserve democracy.
Discord within the Chicago Teachers Union that spends big in the race for mayor. Some of that spending potentially violating state law.
It is a joke that we're spending this much time and money to have this conversation.
Older people frustrated over police brass response to officers tied to extremist groups. That and more in Spotlight Politics.
And the MW already knocked on the door essentially and said, are you doing anything with that?
Learn how the Chicago area's major water treatment agency is using a byproduct from local breweries.
We cannot afford to be afraid.
A sneak peek of our conversation with Dolores Huerta, the longtime labor activist behind the Si Se Puede anthem. And the U.S. is facing a native seed shortage. A look at why that matters and local efforts to help develop a sustainable supply. And now to some of today's top stories. The Chicago Teachers Union is under fire from within, and the union has been forced to make changes to some of its election filings or risk violating state law. The union has been front and center with its support of one of its own, Brandon Johnson, as a candidate for Chicago mayor. The big bucks and election actions are now causing some teachers union members to speak out. A Chicago Teachers Union Political Action Committee has donated more than $1 million so far to the mayoral campaign of Brandon Johnson. And union leadership is all in on the candidate, who is also a paid CTU officer and Cook County commissioner. But that support is hardly unanimous among the 27,000 rank-and-file members of the union, which some say is more ideologically diverse than leadership lets on.
Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, progressives, libertarians, Green Party, and so forth. And every one of those people have a right to be heard, and they aren't.
A group of CTU members met with me this week, eager to air their frustration at how much of their dues money is supporting the union's political ambitions. In the last 3 weeks, the Chicago Teachers Union loaned a total of $415,000 to 2 political action committees it controls. Those committees, chaired by Union President Stacey Davis Gates, have spent largely on Johnson's campaign and a handful of city council races. Members say the loan was made behind their backs, without having the chance to vote on it.
Members weren't notified. Many of us were notified by going on to the website and finding out that this money was donated, and it wasn't done in a transparent way.
In a statement, union officials say the money will be repaid to the union from future PAC revenues, which come from voluntary dues paid by teachers union members. It's not the first time the union loaned to a political committee. The Chicago Tribune reports a loan of more than $300,000 to a political action committee in 2015. Teachers union members say they are still waiting for the bulk of that money to be repaid, and they say they expect a similar result this time. Show of hands. Who believes that that money is going to be paid back to the union? Nobody really believes that that money is coming back. Why not?
Our experience as union members is that we've loaned another candidate during another election money, and it never was repaid.
The loan is not only controversial, but might also be illegal. State Board of Elections spokesman Matt Dietrich says the board sent a letter to the union. According to state law, labor organizations can't give a PAC more than $27,400 and by law cannot loan money.
It would have to be a loan from a financial institution. And in this case, it is a loan from a labor organization, which is treated as a contribution, which means it's subject to the contribution limits.
CTU has spent big on Johnson and a number of city, county, and state races in the last year and has spent thousands directly on mailers supporting Johnson. Some members worry the union is running out of money. Some fear the only option left is to raise dues, which already average around $1,200 per year per member.
Those resources could be used for a strike fund, and they're not. You know, this, by members becoming disenchanted with the union, by members wanting to pull their dues, this is going to dissipate our political power.
And late this afternoon, an attorney for the Chicago Teachers Union told the Illinois Elections Board they would revise that filing to make it listed not as a loan, but as a donation of aggregate union dues. And according to the Elections Board, that change would make them in compliance with the law, but that then raises questions as to whether or not the union could have made that donation without the approval of its members. Many of the union members I spoke with belong to factions within the union that have opposed the current leadership. Ms. Esposito Userbowski, whom you heard from there, opposed Stacey Davis Gates in the last union election. But they all say they are not working or volunteering for any other candidates for mayor. And in other news tonight, Chicago Public Schools invests $76 million to upgrade security cameras at schools for student and staff safety. The investment will be over 3 years and, according to a statement, is viewed as, quote, a critical part of CPS's comprehensive safety initiatives. At a news conference at Eli Whitney Elementary School, CPS CEO Pedro Martinez explained how schools would be prioritized for the camera upgrades.
We're looking at enrollment. We're looking at current camera conditions, as well as the number of safety incidents that are taking place at the school, as well as the number of criminal incidents that are taking place in the community near the school.
And asked about the new expenditure on security cameras, Chicago Teachers Union Vice President Jackson Potter had this to say.
We have to examine how it's being utilized and where it's being utilized to ensure it's done equitably and in a way that's actually going to keep school communities safe.
And you can read much more about this story on our website. Travelers passing through O'Hare will now be able to avoid some big-time hassles. From March 1st, for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic, passengers in transit will be able to use a secure bus service between Terminal 5 and Terminals 1 and 3. The soon-to-be resumed service, which was suspended in March 2020, will make it far easier for passengers with connecting flights. Currently, passengers have to exit security, use the airport transportation system to reach their connecting terminal, and then be rescreened before entering the secure area. And a weather advisory is in effect as a winter storm brings freezing rain and treacherous, icy driving conditions to northern Illinois. The advisory from the National Weather Service is in effect until 6 a.m. tomorrow and impacts northern Cook County along with Lake, Ogle, DeKalb, and Kane counties. Drivers are advised to drive with caution as icy patches could form on untreated bridges and secondary roads and with wind gusts up to 35 miles per hour. Be careful out there. And up next, officers tied to extremist groups, the mayor's race, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis visits Illinois. All those stories and more with our Spotlight Politics team right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabey family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Pretty startling admission from a Chicago police deputy chief at a heated hearing about an officer with admitted ties to the anti-government Oath Keepers. And there's less than a week left in the race for mayor, in case you hadn't heard. All that and more in this week's Spotlight Politics. And joining us now are our good friends, Amanda Vinicky and Heather Shrum, both legitimately my very good friends. So first tonight, the City Council Public Safety Committee rips Chicago Police Department leaders over keeping an officer with ties to two right-wing groups, the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys.
If someone today said, I am a member of the Oath Keepers, I am a sworn member of the Chicago Police Department, I acknowledge that, could their tenure be terminated? Could their position in CPD be terminated?
No, sir.
No.
Kind of universal anger here from City Council. Heather, tell us why the department cannot get rid of these officers who have admitted these ties.
Well, there's no explicit policy in the police department that says you can't be a member of certain groups, the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys among them. Now, we heard today that the police department is developing such a policy, but it is still in draft form, hasn't been approved by the federal judge or the team overseeing the consent decree, so it is very much in works. But if you ask Inspector General Deborah Witzberg, she would say you absolutely can fire an officer for being a member of the Oath Keeper because it brings disrepute and scandal on the department, which is against the policy. So there was really sort of just bafflement on the City Council today about why the police department was so reluctant to fire one officer who admitted that he was a member of the Oath Keeper and another officer who admitted that he had ties to the Proud Boys and was found found to have lied about it.
Right. The difference of opinion from those different departments there. Amanda, another story you covered this week, former mayoral rival Susana Mendoza accused current Mayor Lightfoot of betraying Chicago cops disabled by COVID-19, including her brother. Let's take a look at what the mayor said about that yesterday.
Under my administration, pension benefits aren't determined on the basis of my personal relationships or personal feelings about anyone or their brother. And frankly, that's how it should be. Now, if the law needs to be changed, then Springfield should act.
So what the mayor is saying here, Amanda, is she has no control over the pension board. Don't blame her, and she shouldn't have control. Does that mean this is kind of open and shut?
I don't think that this is open and shut. First of all, this comes a week before the election. So although Mendoza has denied that the timing has anything to do with the mayor's race, it certainly looks like a political hit. And it is such, I think, for the mayor when you have people that say, hey, wait a second, you're looking at crime in the city, feeling bad for these police officers who are very clearly disabled and hurt, and Mendoza's brother in particular. So I don't think that this is done. And by the way, of course it's not done, because I do think it raises questions about, in general, influence. It causes us to look more at the pension board decisions, this as well as others. There could be court action. So no, this is certainly not done at this point in time. And there's a lot of movement here in the mayor's race affairs. I'm going to toss this question to you.
Okay,
you got
sure.
it, of course. All right, so a late breaking story, and you're covering this actually, in that it regards the Chicago Teachers Union shuffling money to their preferred candidate in this race. Of course, that is CTU organizer Brandon Johnson, and there are some questions in terms of the money that CTU is giving him and whether it's legal.
A hat tip to Rich Miller in the Capitol Facts, who first brought up this morning that this $415,000 loan, if it's a loan, would actually fall outside the bounds of state law. It would not be illegal. So as we reported late this evening, CTU leaders are revising that, saying it's no longer a loan. We're going to call this aggregate dues donation. But this is making members even more angry, Heather. They're basically saying, this is our money, we didn't approve this, and we don't think this is ever going to come back to us. A bit of an unforced error here by CTU?
Well, look, there are only 6 days to go. Crazy stuff is going to happen in the next couple of days. But anytime this close to an election, you're not talking about the candidate, and you're not talking about his positions, or you're not talking about his opponent's bad positions, that's an error.
And, of course, this money was sent to their PACs, which has supported Johnson and a slate of city council candidates. Amanda, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I think Heather is right. First of all, that this close, you don't want any sort of unforced error or detraction from a candidate. But also, I do think that it raises the ties between Johnson and the CTU. And for him, that might be a good thing, but for those who maybe aren't that aware and are upset with that trajectory, this raises that again, and so it could be detrimental.
Speaking of ties, what about the ties between the FOP and Paul Vallas? The FOP helped sponsor this event where Florida Governor Ron DeSantis comes to Elmhurst and speaks, and then you go there, and the guy that kind of put this together, was behind it, John Catanzara, is not there. How come?
Well, Catanzara has said that he wasn't the organizer, and in fact, this was a 3-city tour on DeSantis's part, so it appears really to have been organized by DeSantis. But regardless,
Certainly
it did draw attention.
Pre-presidential stumping
tour. Exactly. But still, you cannot dispute, again, that for all of the FOP, and Vallas says that it is the rank and file who are behind him, that is it also hurting him to have that endorsement and those ties to Catanzara, among other claims that he's, too right-leaning, too Republican, and has allied himself with some other hate groups. So Catanzara was not actually at the event, nor was Vallas.
And it might be why Vallas came out right away and said, I don't like this event happening. I repudiate it. I don't like what Governor DeSantis stands for. Maybe surprise some of his supporters and detractors. And speaking of Vallas, Heather, Mayor Lightfoot says that when Vallas tells voters we need to, quote, take our city back, it's a dog whistle. Explain that for us.
Well, the old cliche in Chicago politics is that the only issue is race, and we'll really see that coming to the forefront in these last couple of weeks. At the same time, Mayor Lightfoot is also facing allegations that she's also playing the race card, because she told black voters on the South and the West Side that she's the only black candidate that has a shot to win, so that unless they want Paul Vallas or Jesus Chuy Garcia to be mayor, they should vote for her, which is clearly saying that the one white, one Latino candidate in the race won't won't properly represent Black Chicago, which is really, I think, sort of made people sort of sit up and take notice.
This really echoes a lot of the stuff that was said during the Harold Washington both campaigns, which we weren't working then. We were born, but we weren't around to cover. But we can still read about. All right, that's the time for us tonight. Amanda Vinicky, Heather Sharon, thanks so much. And with the election just days away, don't forget to visit our WTTW News voter guide for candidate profiles and responses to questionnaires, and of course, our ongoing political coverage. It's all at WTTW.com/voter guide. Up next, how a byproduct from local breweries is helping to keep waterways clean.
What should the city be doing to better support Black Chicagoans who are victims and survivors of hate crimes?
Classic city of Chicago, we work in silos, so the left hand doesn't know what the right hand doing, and the constituents get left out in between.
Power is the voice. The power is the numbers. The power are the people. The ability to sway election is the power.
The Metropolitan Water Reclamation District has been called the most important government agency that nobody knows about it. Do you know about it? It's the agency that treats stormwater and wastewater for more than 5 million people in Cook County. And one of the methods to treat that water is a surprising way to reuse a byproduct from the creation of a very popular beverage. Chicago Tonight's Nick Blumberg has that story.
Without clean water, your favorite local beer wouldn't exist.
Water is the #1 ingredient in our beer. We use Lake Michigan water.
That's why when the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District approached Revolution Brewing about taking some of the byproduct from its brewery off their hands, Josh Deeth and his colleagues were all ears. That byproduct is spent yeast.
This holds a week's worth of waste, which is it's a pretty big tank, right? These are 24-foot ceilings here. The hops and the yeast fall to the bottom of the tank. They gather in the cone.
Once that yeast has played its part fermenting the beer, Revolution doesn't have a use for it.
Previously, we would have just put it down the drain and had to flush it down with some extra water, send it out through the city sewer system. This program that we're focusing on today is a way to repurpose that ingredient, give it a higher purpose.
That purpose? Using the carbon-rich spent yeast to reduce the amount of phosphorus in the water MWRD treats. If there's too much phosphorus in the water, that can feed microorganisms that can harm waterways.
They want to eat and they want to reproduce. And when they reproduce, you end up things with like algal blooms that can then lead to fish kills and then can lead to dead zones.
On a recent Thursday, a truck full of spent yeast arrives at the MWRD's 400-plus acre Stickney facility in Cicero. A hose connects the tanker to an underground receptacle for the spent yeast, and a staffer tests that the material from the brewery is safe.
I remember when the first trucks came in, we kind of joked and said, should we bottle that because it smells really good?
I can confirm that it does smell like beer.
Using the fragrant byproduct is one way the MWRD says it wants to move away from a mindset of water treatment to resource recovery. Even the phosphorus that the MWRD wants out of the water, it's reusing that to make fertilizer.
It's this idea of like recycling materials, recovering things that you would have thrown in the garbage and now are just basically saying is like, wait, I can reuse that for something else.
Revolution's Josh Deeth has helped encourage other local breweries to get involved in the resource recovery program too.
We actually save money by not having to pay as many sewer fees to the MWRD. It made dollar sense for us as a company in addition to making good environmental sense.
As we've learned from cities like Jackson, Mississippi, or even closer here to Chicago and some of our southern suburbs, water is not always a given. We're lucky to live so close to one of the world's largest water resources in the Great Lakes. We should preserve it, protect it, and make sure that we don't take it for granted.
The program's innovative, and MWRD leaders want to keep the momentum going.
We're looking at other ways to partner with other industries and other companies to use this resource so we can all have a win-win situation.
So just remember, next time you lift a glass of locally brewed beer, you just might be doing your part to help the environment. For Chicago Tonight, I'm Nick Blumberg. Cheers.
Enjoy that beer, Nick. The Resource Recovery Program first started in 2017. In addition to spent yeast, the MWRD can also accept grains and hops from breweries and other materials from food processing facilities. And up next, we investigate a native seed shortage and local efforts to help develop a more sustainable supply. Stay with us.
Coverage of science and technology on Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Joel M. Friedman, president of the Alvin H. Baum Family Fund.
From helping heal land charred by wildfires to restoring wetlands, native seeds pack a mighty punch for their small size. But a recent report found eco-restoration projects across the country are facing a native seed shortage. Thankfully, efforts to develop a more sustainable supply are now underway with help from the Chicago Botanic Garden. And WTTW News reporter Patty Wetley joins us now to explain on the native seed beat here. Patty,
Yes.
First explain why they are so important and why they're in short supply.
Well, they're the building blocks for any restoration, whether it's a Midwest prairie or wetlands in the Southeast. These are the plants that evolved and adapted for that specific ecosystem. So these are the ones that support the wildlife that go with that ecosystem. They're perfect for the soil that's there and the temperature and all those things. If you think about coneflowers and tall grasses in the prairie, those are the plants that were historically there. So when you're doing any restoration, that's what you want to recreate. The issue is one of capacity. There's a very small pool of suppliers and growers of native seed. They're tricky to grow. They can take time to grow them. And if you're looking at a season where 10 million acres burn in wildfires and you want to reseed that, there just isn't the supply for that.
And Chicago Botanic Garden, they're getting involved here, so
Yes.
what are their solutions?
So one of their researchers was part of the committee that created this new report. They participate in a program called Seeds of Success, where they actually go to different natural areas across the country and collect seed. But, you know, they say collecting seed, you're never going to have enough. They need to find a way to, like, ramp up the commercial kind of industrial side of this. So they need something like what the Department of Ag does for agricultural seeds, which is to create research centers so that for some of these really important native plants that are super hard for growers to grow from seed, you know, they develop the research techniques to help them along. They would do things like have land managers commit to, we will restore X amount of acres every year, so that growers who are investing in these long-term seed banks, you know that there's going to be, demand for what they're producing. So, it's basically been a supply and demand conundrum, and they're looking for ways to solve that.
All right, good opportunity here for growers. Patty Wetley,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Thanks, Paris.
And you can read Patty's full story on our website. That's WTTW.com/news. It's a simple sentiment, but the phrase "si se puede," or "yes we can," has powered rallies for justice around the world ever since the United Farm Workers of America adopted it as its motto in 1972. The woman behind those words is Dolores Huerta. She's one of the most influential labor activists in America and a leader of the Chicano civil rights movement. Earlier today, Joanna Hernandez sat down with the 92-year-old. Here's a sneak peek of their conversation that will air Saturday night on Chicago Tonight Latino Voices. In it, Huerta describes what "si se puede" means to her at this juncture in her career.
Well, it means activism. It means that people can have the power to change things in their lives, change things politically. And it means that every person should feel their own power and know that they can make a difference.
And that's very important to you, for people to feel their own power. How come?
Well, because there's so many things that we need to make better in our society, especially now that our democracy is at risk. And so it's so important for people to know that it's important for them to vote, to get involved and get engaged civically, and to make sure that they know what's happening on around them, to be informed, what laws are being what laws are being considered at the state level and at the national level, and that they need to contact their representatives, their congressmen, their commissioners, all the people around them that govern us. It's important that we have a voice.
It's very true. Now, you fought against police brutality your whole life, and you yourself beaten by police in 1988. Do you believe the murder of George Floyd and other movements since then have sparked something different in our nation?
Oh, absolutely. We know that this has been going on for a long time, and it was kind of like, you might say, undercover. People didn't know what was going on, but the murder of George Floyd really brought this to the attention of the whole world, as we know.
How is it for you to see the youth speaking out and organizing? It seems like there's a new movement.
Yes, but we still have a lot of our youth that need to vote. Unfortunately, I think we have a lot of our young people that they live to protest and they live to march. They don't realize that voting is the only way that we can change things. And I know that right now you have elections going on here in Chicago. And so we want to say to all the young people out there, please get out there and vote. It's so important.
Still as vibrant as ever. Again, that was Joanna Hernandez with labor activist Dolores Huerta. And you can check out that full conversation on Chicago Tonight Latino Voices this Saturday night at 6 o'clock. And that is our show for this Wednesday night. Don't forget to stay connected with us by signing up for our daily briefing and get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. You can also get the show via podcast in the PBS video app. And please join us tomorrow night live at 10. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a proud sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused free continuing legal education for lawyers throughout the region.
Next time.
Welcome to Langley Hall.
When Bunty speaks at a school for troubled young women.
I could tell you a few stories, that is for sure. But I won't.
The headmistress.
I hate you! I wish you were dead!
Is murdered.
We need to find Brenda Palmer.
They want me to confess to something I didn't even do.
And Father Brown investigates.
There's more going on here than meets the eye.
Father Brown.
Thursday at 8 on WTTW.
Next time on Shakespeare and Hathaway.
She's got a mystery that's haunting her.
A woman wants the team to investigate her mother's death.
She crashed into a ditch. They didn't find the car till a week later.
She suspects her father's involvement.
She's wrong.
But when he's killed, they're given a puzzle.
Begin with the princes.
Begin with the princess.
And Lou will have to step up.
Bingo.
You terrify me sometimes.
Shakespeare and Hathaway.